Well, hello, everyone. This is Richard Waring, a longtime member of the PoemWorks community, welcoming you to another fine reading. And I want to start off with a couple of interesting quotes that I've gathered. Man of letters, Brendan Gill, wrote, "If the unexamined life is not worth living, the unexamined past is not worth possessing. It bears fruit only by being held continuously up to the light, and is as changeable and as full of surprises, pleasant and unpleasant, as the future." I find that interesting. You dip into the past and then you come up with some surprises. Love that. Well, Joyce Johnson wrote, "Artists are nourished more by each other than by fame or by the public. To give one's work to the world is an experience of peculiar emptiness. The work goes away from the artist into a void, like a message stuck in a bottle and flung into the sea. We are nourished more by each other than what we send out into the world." That's what we do tonight, you know? Lastly, British writer J.B. Priestley says, "Most writers enjoy two periods of happiness: when a glorious idea comes to mind, and secondly, when a last page has been written and you haven't had time to know how much better it ought to be." He also said, "Much of writing might be described as mental pregnancy with successive difficult deliveries." And I feel that strongly. Every poem is delivered in a different way. You know, some of them have complications and take a while to be delivered. Others come easily and almost unprompted. Well, our first wonderful feature poet for tonight is Cynthia Bargar, and she's the associate poetry editor at Pancreas. Her poems have appeared or are upcoming in many journals, including Nick's Mate, Swim Every Day, Driftwood Press, Rogue Agent, Book of Matches, Lumina, and the book Our Provincetown, Intimate Portraits by Barbara E. Cohen, Provincetown Arts Press, 2021. Her poetry collection, Sleeping in the Dead Girl's Room, came out from Lily Poetry Review Books in January 2022. Cynthia lives with her partner, cartoonist Nick Thorkelton, in Provincetown, Massachusetts. Please welcome Cynthia.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Richard, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be reading with Wendy, my dear friend, who is the reason I'm sort of an honorary PoemWorks member, because ever since the pandemic, I've been writing with mostly PoemWorks writers in a weekly workshop, and we do a reading session, and it's just enriched my life tremendously. So I'm very grateful to be here. And I am going to read some poems from my book, which I'm trying something new where everything is not, I'm not looking at the book, but this is my book, Sleeping in the Dead Girl's Room. And as Richard said, it came out from Lily in January. And I want to give you a little context so that I might, be able to know where I'm going here. My father's sister, Cynthia May Bargar, died at age 18 when my mother was 1 month pregnant with me. The death was a suicide to some, an accident to others. By the time I was born, my parents were living in the house where she died in Winthrop, Mass. I inherited her room and her full name, and you could say I was haunted. For a time, this haunting landed me in a mental hospital. The book is dedicated to all the women and girls whose stories were buried with them. So I'll read a few of these poems. The first one I'm going to read is called Ghost Locket. Back seat of the sedan, 3-year-old me leans on my grandmother, strokes her sealskin coat, its cool pelts. I look up to see the locket around her neck. The girl in the locket stares back, does not smile. That's my Cindy, says my grandmother. She's in a better place now. Shh, shh. The next poem, To Cindy, is this how I will resurrect you? A sculpture in a portico, a lily in my garden. I don't know what would be fitting. Cindy May Bargar of Winthrop, my father's one sister, Cindy of the night beach, Cindy air, Cindy vapor. You escaped, left me the name. This next poem um, is called 9 Days Before Your Death, and it's in 9 parts, short parts. 1. This photo, unposed, black and white, smile lingers seductive, fresh, no disquiet in your eyes. 2. Your hair kerchiefed, a few curls undone, reminders this is summer.
Mm,
3. Summer captures the swell of your breasts, the rumpled ruffle under your sunlit clavicle. 4. You grip a vanilla cone, one scoop.
mm,
It drips, speckles your fingers. 5. Smitten with the one behind the camera. 6. Beautiful, not because we are blood, no, not that desire to imbue one's dead kin with beauty. 7. Everlasting girl grace, so unlike our women, frowsy uterine ancestors, their loose house dresses. 8. A tall tree behind you looms. 9. Composed, you walk toward me, almost out of frame.
mm, 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 mm.
Hmm.
This one's called A Full Day at the Beach. Sun scorching your shoulders, you lingered past dusk, long after the others danced the sand for last clam bubbles, filled their pails, and paraded home for supper. You stayed early evening, the heat, the lowest tide, the stench. When darkness engulfed, you rolled up your blanket and walked home. Next poem is called Tidal, and it's not title, but Tidal. Tidal. Cloud-covered, ill-omened, gunmetal August night, driftwood debris falling towards water, beach seal baitfish, stranded silver peanut bunker, her hand squeezing wet sand, drip castle encrustation, pebbles, glass, the end piling at the end. What is tidal? Um, I'm going to say a little bit about this poem. Sylvia Plath, as most of you might know, spent some of her early years in Winthrop. So this poem imagines my aunt talking to her in the afterlife. It's called My Aunt Talks to Sylvia Plath, and there's an epigraph, What the Sluttish Rutted Sea Could Do, Sylvia Plath, Point Shirley. Your sluttish rutted sea churned up trouble for our families. Some call Winthrop by the Sea a fitting childhood home for you. Your words embalmed with moist and misty beach breaths, razored like the clams we love to dig. I left behind little proof of that place fitting or not fitting. Your grandmother's Point Shirley geranium bed with a hurricane-pounded shark startled 6-year-old you, while a mile away and 3 years older, I watched tall pines sway, dip, crack in my front yard, hostas airborne, their leaves like propellers on the plains whose lights we both craved, landing nightly at Logan. After the storm, did I push you in the swing at Ingleside Park? Did our mothers, Dorothy and Aurelia, nod, never speak, each already afraid? When the bell rang, I believe it was you who chased me up the hill to the Willis School. I chose to die during an August heat wave. You may have heard it was gas. Um, the next poem I'm going to read, I'm just going to read three of the several sections. And the poem itself is the beginning poem in the book, and it's called Creative Nonfiction. 1. You, who is the I, are the patient. You and your brother stand in the back of the ambulance. No stretcher, no straps this gray February day. No sirens, no careening down Storrow Drive or up the Jamaica Way. Your brother pleads, why are you acting like this? It's not funny. He walks in the door of the mental hospital with you. Your father is there, pacing, does not look at you. You offer him a wallet-sized photo of the Swami, your guru. Hope it will calm him down. He says, sign the yellow form, make it voluntary. You sign. Despite the shot in the emergency room at the regular hospital, you are still high. They lock you in a ward. You have nothing. No book, no hairbrush, no glasses, no keys. This place is locked up tight. Alarms blink and blare when you try to open the door. Someone always watches, always sees. This is not sad for you. You are the one who laughs, the only one. An adventure like an acid trip. You have no key. Key is not a metaphor. 2. The other Cynthia, the she who's not the I, visits. Vapor. The she is vapor, faceless funnel. The she vanishes. 3. The she who is not the I haunts and blesses. The I is driftwood, covered with barnacles, as is the she. The she is organza, drenched, illuminated, as is the I. Who knows this? Is the haunting a fact? Is the blessing a truth? The she appears to be sleeping. The I is sleeping. The she is gone. Is this what truth is? Always an echo? Not twins, because the I is a body. The she is vapor. There are no vapor body twins. How do you know this? On the recording, your brother asks your mother, who says, my in-laws had lost their daughter. We named our daughter after her. My in-laws, shh, shh. My in-laws, shh, shh. The last one I'm going to read from the book is called Impetuous Tendencies. And this also has an epigraph from the author's patient file at Glenside Hospital. Patient became excited, preoccupied with sexual thoughts and denudative. The American Journal of Insanity, circa 1905, says, we place satyrs and nymphomaniacs immediately after the imbecile and feeble of intellect. However impetuous be the tendencies, the intelligence, if it is normal, governs and restrains them. A woman, her lascivious bearing, provocative movements, amorous utterances, falls to the level of the animal. Her intellect neither reigns nor governs. Richard, do I have time for a couple more?
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
go for it.
Okay. So these are new poems that I'm excited that I finally have new poems. So this one is called This Will Not Be the End of It. Luckily, the night ends with a calm over Valparaiso. Neruda's chair a cloud, they tell themselves. A boat muffles the sound of sleep. An old woman sighs from her fullness or freedom, from tears beating the sky. He might have fled to Mexico before dying. Children play and bend their bodies in the streets until they scatter like stars upon the mountains, their chatter and rattle like so many questions from the withered flowers around the corner. This one is called Transmutation. Brew bronze and brass, and what is alchemy? Blizzard binging Law and Order SVU as Alex inks a stick and poke above my left wrist. They use acupuncture needles for that precise thin line. Circle with a center dot, triangle crowned and filigree flourished, symbol for gold, gold being the goal, secret recipe, elixir for eternal life, perfection of all matter. Al's knuckles sport 4 of the 5 elements. I crave all 7 metals. The mystical mathematics, 6 to 4 hexagrams, magico-religious implications, weirdness, wickedness, plus inked at home, holy, like a home birth, but no ritual, secularized by TV rapists, sex workers, detectives. Nothing to do with beauty, nothing to do with God. And the last poem I'm going to read is called Garden Augur. And I've been fooling around with this poem for 2 years, and maybe I have it, maybe I don't. Garden Augur. Fox in the yard this day of atonement, loose-limbed, red-coated dancer, pounce, splayed out, belly up, split-necked tail, rat. As if the fox, while I was fasting, had run a blade, slit its prey, gobbled the guts, and left a skeletal coat for me, born in the year of the rat. Meaning I am possibly optimistic, possibly likable, possibly stubborn, may possess a demonic element. Still pink the coneflowers, the milkweed, its profuse green pods, rat dismembered among the mischief, fox gone. I augur the soil to divine the meaning. I am fox, I am rat. And that's all she wrote. Thank you.
So wonderful. Wow. Really enjoyed that. No, I was reminded of something that Franz Wright said about the dead. You know, the dead, where aren't they? And even if held in as a secret, the secret comes out somehow. And as for if a poem is finished, it reminded me of a well-known artist who went into a art gallery, saw one of his pictures, and started. There was a scene of a mountainside with all sorts of green trees. He started putting a white chapel in the amongst the trees, and the museum guard said, "You know, what are you doing, sir?" He's like, "It's my painting. I just hadn't finished it yet." So is a poem finished ever, or is it just abandoned? We'll have to see. New lightning could strike at any moment, I suppose. Up next, we have Wendy Drexler.
Thank you.
Let me introduce you. Wendy Drexler is a recipient of a 2022 Artist Fellowship from the Massachusetts Cultural Council. Her 4th collection, Notes from the Column of Memory, which is absolutely wonderful, I said editorially, has just been published by Terrapin Books in September 2022. Previous collections include Before There Was Before, Iris Press, 2017. Her poems have appeared in Barrow Street, J Journal, Lily Poetry Review, Nimrod, Pangreas, Prairie Schooner, Salamander, Solstice, South Florida Poetry Review, Sugar House, the Atlantic Review, the Mid-American Review, the Hudson Review, and Threepenny Review, among others. Where hasn't she been? Her work has been featured on Verse Daily and WBOR's Cognoscenti and in numerous anthologies. She's been the poet in residence at New Mission High School in Hyde Park since 2018 and is programming co-chair for the New England Poetry Club. Please welcome Wendy.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for coming, and thanks for having me. Cynthia, it's just delightful to get to read with you. I love your work, and you are a dear friend. The she who is the I or is not the I, just fabulous. I told Cynthia that her book is one of the only poetry books that's a pot boiler. I really had to just take it in one gulp. So I highly recommend it. It's wonderful. I have a new book, which is exciting. I'll be reading from it. And as the title suggests, it is an investigation of memory, what gets remembered, how it gets remembered, and how the past keeps informing the present. And my book is still pretty new. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure, coming up with a reading. There's so many different ways I could go. And I'm discovering what my book knows that I didn't. For example, it has recently informed me that I have 3 poems that have eggs in them, and none of them involving breakfast. So I'm going to begin with a little egg set. And the first poem is dedicated to Barbara Helfgott Hyatt, who started this PoemWorks series, and which many of you have been involved in one way or the other. And yeah, our dear friend and mentor as well. This first poem is set in Newfoundland, where I traveled with Barbara and the workshop in 2018. This is called The Gannets at Cape St. Mary's. Barbara says there are fewer nesting pairs this year. I can't see the missing, only the sea stack swarming with thousands of birds, a fever of birds, pairs nesting on narrow shelves, racket of wind-whipped screeches and grunts, the air acrid with guano. Walking back along the cliff, I bend down to finger a broken shell tangled in caribou moss. Tuck the pieces in my pocket, throw them away that night. You can't keep every broken thing. I thought maybe the rock walls could last, but stones fall, clattering against themselves, the way the heart of an unborn chick beats faster the first time it hears the family song, precise lifeline of notes that chick must learn. I thought all birds sang for beauty. Not for beauty. I'll learn to love them more for that. And this is for Vivian, who also loves turtles. The only soft-shell turtle in Walden Pond. I'm afraid for her as she begins to scrape with her back legs, and because her foot-wide shell looks soft as a floppy felt hat. She shuffles back into water, pokes her head up like a snorkel, hauls herself onto the beach. She's breathing hard now, refusing to give up. Her legs tear at the hard-packed sand, which begins to yield to her stubborn necessity. The ranger has put up a hazard cone and yellow tape to keep us back. Her eggs, unfertilized, will never hatch. But she buries them anyway, born to this, bound to this.
Mm.
You should say you were really there.
Apology to my ovaries. They plucked you out before you could kill me. I had to make a clean sweep. Forgive me, conductor of my train to the future, my artist daughter of long fingers and kindness, my son with his kilowatt wit and quiver of dreams. You were my gardener, my stock pot, my pantry, your shelves filled with my lifetime supply. My arbor, pre-designed and signed at birth, my divine egg timer, my clock that never needed winding. You were my pinkish gray, almond-shaped, and my God, you were brave, wore menstruation like a brightly flowered dress.
Ooh.
And the bloody labor of your fields, your timely hatchery, your drop-down deliveries, your tubes swaying like anemones. I too thought we could wither into gentle senescence together. Forgive me for evicting you in your dotage, not even a hearing, your desk cleared in an hour, everything you'd ever carried weighing just over 2 ounces. Forgive me, you who were my wheelhouse, my workhorse, my backfill, my unpaid laborer. You who toiled decades in the mine of me.
Wow.
Thank you. And I say yes to the way the grass. And I say yes to the way the grass needs the soil, and the soil needs the grass. The way the candle needs the wick, and the wick the candle.
Mm.
Yes to the way the lion and the buck need one another, and the bluebird the caterpillar. To the ocean that needs a shore for its waves. Yes to the cymbals for needing the violins, and violins for needing the winds.
Mm.
To the 4 winds and the 16 quarter winds and the 32 winds it takes to make a compass rose. Yes to each petal that needs the other 40 petals to be a rose, and to the rose for holding all the petals before letting them die for the new bud. Yes to the stars closing their eyes at the same time to darkness. Yes to the rain in the valley of thirst. And I say yes to the time we live with because we've got to live with it. Yes to loving better, to coming in from anywhere. Corral. Somewhere, my father had another whole family I didn't know, a wife I didn't know, hardly ever saw. One son and a younger son. Somewhere he lived with all of them in a house. I went to that house once. Was it brick, maybe a lawn, some trees living happily ever after? I lived with my mother. My father came for me on weekends. Once he told me a secret about this family. One of his sons wasn't his real son. He told me no one else knew. Perhaps he told me this to make me feel special because I was his favorite child, his only daughter. I liked keeping his secret. He trusted me with it. I guarded it desperately. It charged around inside me like a herd of horses galloping across a vast bare plain. To keep the horses safe, every time I saw my father, I wore the red cowgirl boots he bought for me and made of myself a corral.
Mm. Wow.
My father as a taxidermied fox. I know, it's a bit of a stretch, but I failed to flush an ounce of you from death. Your boundary musk, your lunge and sprung plunge refuse me. You stalked nightly your lair, some long gone bramble, the kits you carried by the nape, the shadow beneath your paw. Your secrets, the moles and voles and mice, bristle the wire of your tail, stipple the fur on your flanks, cross hatch. I do not dare my hand that tries to trace your negative space. How close you dared. Fox who wandered into the barn, sniffed the cup of coffee on the floor. You stood on dunes and listened to foxes howl from the swale and held your breath.
Mm.
This next poem is in part inspired by Edward Hopper's painting Gas. Gas. It's 6:30 and the attendant at Nick's service station in my town is closing up for the night, setting out bright orange plastic traffic cones. He might be Nick and he might also be the master mechanic on duty, as the sign above the bay door says. He's leaning on his cane as he moves one cone a few inches away from another, getting the spacing exactly right. Now his hands linger as he unkinks hoses on a pump, setting them down for the night. And I'm thinking of Hopper's Gas, the attendant behind the pump, doing something we can't see as he leans into the work in the dimming light. I lean too, soaked in the silence of dusk, in the lollipop red of the 3 pumps that glow like little moons. I orbit around and past them, skirt the girth of hemlocks that are scooping up the darkness. You don't want to go into those woods either, do you? So you fall down along the ribbon of red-tinged grasses, traverse the strip of macadam that bends slightly right and out of sight. No one's there for you. So you come back to the path of white neon that streams from the station windows and folds the pumps. And even though it's an empty, sharp kind of light, it's all there is to hold on to. Let's cling to it, Nick. Don't close the station now. Take my hand. We can stroll to the mobile gas sign that towers over the tallest tree. Let's climb the pole, mount the red-winged horse, threshing that sky-high field.
Mm-mm.
Oranges. Every morning, my mother would pick 3 soap-scrubbed oranges from the fridge's bottom bin, slice them, and with the good palm of her right hand, she'd press each cut half hard against the juicer's rotating drum until everything that orange had been sluiced down into the round basin, nothing left but the rind. Then she'd tilt the juicer to catch the slow-moving rivulet of pulp and seeds against the strainer's teeth until only filtered juice drizzled into my glass and sparked orange gold. The all-at-onceness spilled on my tongue the hustle of tart and sweet, so sharp it hurt. When my mother died, that burning bore through me as if I had to do something about it or for it, something I couldn't squeeze out.
Hmm.
Hurled in the grip. I'd ask the oncologist to call me if you were dying. We're hopeful, he'd say. That's how he talked. If I despaired, I was letting you down. If I felt hopeful, I was deluding myself. I was hurled in the grip, riptide pulling me out. Thanksgiving, my stepfather hired a cook. We ate at your table. Aunt, uncle, cousins. You were stuck in the hospital. I, too numb and under the thumb of something huge, unspeakable. Fear running through the gravy. Aunt Norma told me she'd try to be a mother to me now. She ate only a baked potato she mashed with her fork. At your funeral, when I should have been rending my clothes, I put on makeup, flirted with my old boyfriend. I was 26. A body must break. My belly swelled up just like yours, Mother. Terrified, I studied the veins of my hands, the red and blue rivers ready to burst. An electric fence circled my brain. When I touch it in my mother dream, I bolt awake.
Hmm.
And I'm going to close with A Crown of Sonnets, which has a couple of sources. One is a wonderful book by Robert McFarlane called Underland, in which he describes a shamanistic burial of a woman who is 40 years old, and the objects that were found in her grave just really stunned me, and I felt like I had to explore what that was about. And at the same time, I had recovered a big Timberland shoebox of my mother's letters that had been sitting on the floor in my study, and I hadn't really been able to begin to read them. And on the Mexican Day of the Dead, I took one out and started to read and began to discover or recover or interrogate all that those letters were saying to me at this point.
Hmm.
I should just say A Crown of Sonnets. I think most of you may know this, but it's a series, in this case, of 7 sonnets, and the last line of the first sonnet becomes the first line of the second sonnet all the way till the end, and in the last sonnet, the last line is the first line of the first sonnet, and you're kind of hanging over a precipice, waiting, hoping that it's all going to come back around like a circle. So The first sonnet describes the shamanistic burial. And I will also want to say that a stone marten is not made of stone, it's actually an animal. I had to look it up. So, burial of a woman with the blackened shells of 86 tortoises. Southern Levant, 10,000 BCE. What if 40 shells had been placed in her grave, one for each of her years? I hope they held a shell for sorrow, eased her husband's grief for her hair, her sighs, her voice. A ritual spell, the leg of a boar on her shoulders to widen the way. Could those pelts have kept her from the cold? The 2 stone martens they spread across her body, and liquefaction of her soul, that stole that warmed her breasts. I hope she loved and hard, that the auroch's tail steadied her spine, and the eagle's wing was transport, carried her past the uphill grass to outlast time. Sprinkled like holy water, those tortoise shells, with or without the need for heaven, for hell. With or without the need for heaven, for hell, I clutched my bony rabbit's foot for luck. The rabbit dead, the foot chopped off. Cruel that crisp, gold-capped clasp. No blood, no muck. At night in bed I stroked the silky fur, brown and white, slept with the chain so tight around my finger it left a faithful ring. The lore was to kill the rabbit in the night, a graveyard moon, the rabbit set down crying like a natural child. And I'm stuck on why they placed a hacked off human foot inside the woman's grave. Was that for luck? Must we kill, need we sever, to turn ourselves golden and forever? To turn ourselves golden and forever, that's what we want. But I don't really know what my mother wore for her burial. Her lavender ultra suede, or did someone sew a shroud? Was she sleeked in the full-length mink my stepfather gave her? Did she crave a slub of silk from her father's vest? Maybe she wanted her easel, back brace, blue rubber brush to scrub each orange with soap. Where were her lace-up Oxfords she needed, her ankles weak? Where was our family dog, or his leg bone at least? And what did she say last visit in Maine as she was vanishing at 56, after a brief remission? I forgot what she said. Forgive me, I didn't listen. I forgot what you said. Forgive me, I didn't listen. Until now, your voice in your letters, 50 years ago. It's clear that something sharp had come between us. Barbs, worry, wishes, and warnings and scolds. Closing my eyes, I smell your geraniums, the ones with leaves like tongues, their ruddy scent. Your knack for tackling dandelions. You loved your hands in dirt. To nurture growth meant pinching back the blooms. All those years you circled my pool. Stay out of the deep end, stay out of the sun. Too many be sure tos and shouldn'ts. The spills I'd left on the counter. Unsure of myself and whatever I'd done. How hard you were trying to love your daughter. What trouble we had, what turbulent water. What trouble we had, what turbulence. You'd speak to me in code, in nuts and bolts. How long to cook a roast? Best to soak an egg pan in cold water. Don't burn the toast. When what I needed was metaphor, to link the distant, a bridge over churning water to carry me past your house to Saturdays with my weekend father. The drive-ins and car rides with him rushed by too fast. Mother, remember, we watched The Sound of Music, the motherless children, their bright-eyed, breezy new start. The fairy tale gloss, you know they never did cross the Alps. The truth's like water, can't tease it apart. It was myself I hadn't found. A girl can easily run aground. A grasshopper phobia ran you aground each time you saw one. Once in the car you swerved to the curb undone. Had a schoolboy stuffed one down your blouse when you were young unnerved you? I could have taught you to love them, to see their claws as supple strength, your shield that thistle green thorax. their mandibles as sturdy as your will to live, their antennae as your last chance, the music of hearing them rub the pegs on their legs. I was your bell, you rang me faint and feeble. You were my church, you preached and preached and preached, and you were the steeple I tried to climb to the people you thought I needed to know. When I lean down, I hear your silence working its way through the ground. I hear your silence working its way through the ground when I remember how I wanted to hurt you. I'm never going to have children. So sure of myself, my urge to dismantle, my need for you, to refuse what I knew you wanted. If I stitched you a quilt, one patch for shame, one for sorrow, one for when I wasn't with you, when you were dying, one for my denying I was undone. I know you loved me hard, the way a mouse licks and licks her babies. You licked me late and long. I nearly drowned inside your spell. Those licks, to keep me at bay or from harm's way. I've only these 98 lines to soften, to save. What if I'd placed 56 shells in your grave? Thank you.
Woohoo. Beautiful.
Just extraordinary, Wendy, really.
Thank you.
Such an achievement within the larger achievement of your book. It is magnificent. Please, everyone, buy a copy. You will be so rewarded.
It won't work easily.
Thanks so much, Richard.
Well,
Fun to try a sonnet crown when you get a chance, you know.
and it can be of any length.
7, I think, or 16, the big one. Big one's 16.
Wow.
15.
Yeah.
15.
15, thank you. Yeah. It's sort of like running a marathon, you know. I'm glad I did it, and I'm kind of glad it's over. Not reading it, but writing it. It's fun to read it now, but
I mean, we've got Alexis writing a crown.
Right.
Patricia Smith was in Poetry Magazine with a crown. Wow, it's starting to be crown fever.
Wrote a royal crown, which is the 15.
right.
Wow.
Thank you. Yeah.
Perhaps dedicated to Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah.
So I want to welcome to read a poem or a page of a poem, whichever comes first, our first reader in the open mic, Jonathan Abel.
That's what I get for like being on the ball and emailing you early.
Yeah, you want to listen?
But Wendy is hard to follow. I wish I had something with more structure and I mean, a crown, just amazing. Not to belittle Cynthia's poems, which were really quite moving. And along the lines of family relations, I present Kitchen, Dungeon, Dragons. Mothers and fathers and tennis whites lean against formica counters, sip whiskey on rocks, nibble carrot sticks, celery from an avocado fridge, ice from the automatic ice maker, wallpaper of browns and beige, well lit, talk of landscaping, colleges, plastics, sunk in the linoleum basement, paneled knotty pine, my friends, a fellowship, my half-elf wizard learns to cast fire. We trek through Melendorn, the Malachite forest, to the great city Roeth, walls set with lapis, guarded by knights in bright armor chased in gold from the secret mountain. Troops with sapphire banners, we blood brothers fight bandits, cockatrice, Stygian armies, obsidian sorcerers to protect our kingdoms.
Very good.
Mhm.
Wonderful and wonderful background. One of the most poetic backgrounds I have ever seen. And now up, Steve Nickman.
Thanks, Richard. What an amazing reading. I think I'm unmuted. Thank you. What an amazing reading, Cynthia and Wendy. This is called It Seems Almost Everyone is Angry These Days. Between the parking lot and Hammond Pond, I saw a woman giving bread to two noisy Canada geese. She instructed them clearly, but with affection. Don't fight, behave yourselves. By the time I'd come up to them, another woman in a car had stopped. She must have said something to the first woman, who was now defensive. I didn't know no one was supposed to feed them. I'm glad you told me that. When the car moved on, I heard the goose woman say plaintively to the air, what a nasty woman. Her geese were standing there, singing Mozart, Papageno, Papagena, while they waited for more.
And now please welcome Pam Gem.
Thank you. Unbelievable reading, Cynthia and Wendy. Blew me away. Cynthia, I used to work in a state hospital back early in my career, so that those poems just took me back. They're really amazing. So thank you both for your readings. It was beautiful. So this is called Trauma Isn't Bold. Trauma is that knot in my body, a second heartbeat, a secret frequency. Oh God, oh my God, he threatens to kill me. I'm misled, debunked. I'm the enemy. I read trauma theory. While my baby clings to me, I can't sleep. I think of ways to leave. Oh God, oh my God, he's going to kill me. I make plans to run away from the fist of taxing tyranny, but my nerve endings brash, digging into me, mining me. I ask for it. Disaster snaps, a mallet and a cymbal clash. I can't sleep. I can't sleep. Oh God, will he kill me? Oh, let him, over and over again, twist the sinew of my soul. I'm his little treasure trove. He buys me 18-karat gold. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And now, please welcome David Miller.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Yeah, let me add my gratitude and amazement to Wendy and Cynthia for their work. Here's a memory from last summer. Add nothing. It'll come back to me if I stop trying to force it. What's that call? It's lived in my ears longer than memory, but the bird's label eludes me. Better to simply watch down the inn's slope of retired apple trees and away to 3 ranges of waved hills receding ahead of my chair at a round iron table under a striped canvas awning. Mist hovers the gaps between layers of Berkshires. I've arrived at the breakfast porch so far ahead of breakfast that the speakers hovering up in the corners are silent. There's a layer of cicada for listening, plus slight traffic along Richmond Mountain Road, tires on blacktop like ocean waves rising and passing, warbled at this hour with several bird songs I've never yet known how to name. I'm allowing myself to sit with this almost nothing to hear, as the speakers bless me with no recorded music, no velvet jazz with rippling piano, musing muted trumpet. Yesterday morning, before breakfast, it had already come outside, not belligerent, not even loud. But someone within the inn followed the reflex. A person touched the usual button somewhere inside. Sound already granted the name of music moved across the breakfast porch, pasted over what was here already, what anyone could already hear as if it were music. I understand. No one inside with a button pressing, switch flicking finger means to overwhelm the outdoors. It's not domination. It's domestication. Two crows appear in silhouette, sailing across the middle distance tree line. Of course those were crow caws. How fine to have briefly forgotten. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Always a pleasure. Next up, we've got Margot Wazansky.
Hi, everyone. I think I've heard most of those poems, well, probably all of them, between Cynthia and Wendy, but hearing them together in a block, it's never old hat. It's terrific. Yeah. Smells. On hot days, my mother splashed herself with chilled cologne from the fridge. Your scent is your signature, she told me. You announce yourself when you enter a room, and you aren't completely dressed until you perfume yourself in all the right places. A subtle but haunting drop on the inside of your wrist in case someone kisses your hand. A daub under each ear for a kiss on the neck, and between your breasts for what I didn't know. And when she was ready for a cocktail party, my mother came downstairs in a cloud of Estee Lauder Youth Dew, a lingering musk in a black dress, a long string of pearls, patent leather ankle strap heels with their tiny buckles. And I said, I bet you think you look nice. I could make her cry. Lordy,
Thank you,
lordy.
Margot.
Mhm.
Now we have Carrie Loftman.
Your poems are very different caliber than most. In terms of
Hello. Wendy, it's always a pleasure to hear you. And Cynthia, it's nice to meet you. I just have never seen or heard so much beauty in family secrets and sorrow. Thank you so much. I have this small poem called Daily Walk. To inhale river musk as a measure of charity. To bare your skin, thirsty for chill breeze. To clench your sneakered toes, seeking purchase on the fallen, acorns under oaks. To withhold judgment on the man with a cobalt blue crew cut who squats in a tarp tent under Tupelo. To yearn in a wedge of geese, skeining south on homely currents. To pause and salt grief with desiccated leaf. To breathe as if this were your last day, counting mercies to slow your heart. Thank you.
And thank you, Carrie, who we will be hearing more of in February with Heather Nelson, February 3rd. Looking forward to that. I'd like to round out the evening with a poem of my own. I'm not only an MC and a host, I'm also a poet. And this summer, I struggled to overcome endocarditis, a bacterial infection of my heart valve. which left me at about 20% of my usual energy. Thanks to an IV pump that gave me penicillin for 8 weeks, and now I'm on the pill form for the next year, I am probably at 98%. And when I said that to someone, they said, aren't we all? So I feel like I'm back in the land of the living. But this poem has a bit of a what if quality. It's called Unbecoming. I want to be present but invisible, to create unselfies, a field guide to the unseen. Genuineness only thrives in the dark, like asparagus. I play hide and seek with God, a joy to be hidden, a disaster not to be found. As a second-born, one day in kindergarten, I went into a cardboard brick construction and discovered solitude. I had object impermanence until the teacher called me out. I want to be a butterfly that rests with wings closed tight, so its shadow is reduced to a mere line. I want this poem to be rendered in invisible ink, or better yet, scored in ice in winter, available to read only until spring. I want to be the Ukrainian prisoner of war, using a matchstick to write poems on bars of soap, only to wash them off after memorizing them. I want to transform sections of the Bible into Braille, an unseen language for an unseen God. I keep a tombstone rubbing of Emily Dickinson above my bed, the end date called back to remind me that all is erasure. I wouldn't mind being changed into a tree now and again, or a pool of light, to be dissolved into fog over unknown tides. I know I am temporary. Why would I ever want to be finished?
Beautiful, Richard. So glad you're back in health.
Yes, yes.
So
Glad you
much.
got a great poem out of the experience, at least.
Well, yeah, if you survive, you can say, well, at least I got a poem out of it. But please, Lord, less material of that sort. So this concludes a wonderful evening, but we may have some eager banter that we might want to share with one another as to all the amazing words that have been slung and wielded and beautifully tossed our way.
Was fabulous. Thank you, Richard, for emceeing tonight. It was wonderful as usual. It's nice to see everyone. I'm going to go. Thank you.
Bye, Pam.
And thanks for coming.
Bye, Pam.
Bye, Pam.
And I want to say, Cynthia and Wendy, your poems are wonderful and your reading are so beautiful. And I'm so happy to be with you in the same group, learn so much from both of you. And yeah, Wendy is so insightful and so instrumental. Set up all the links, gave all those effective instructions, and Cynthia is so creative and gave all those unusual suggestions. So I'm so happy to be on this path to work with you. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you,
Yeah, it's
Shelley.
wonderful to work with you too.
Yes.
You're a poet. Wow.